My sister's husband freaked out when I revealed that I was in a romantic relationship with someone else. This is just a vent, but advice is welcome. For context, I'm Emily, 18F, and my sister, Lauren, 26F, has been married to her husband, Jacob, 35M, for 3 years. They started dating when she was just beginning college and have been together ever since. From what I've seen, their relationship seems perfect. They always appear so happy and in sync whenever they visit. Our parents didn't make the best life choices, so Lauren had to raise me for most of my life. I am just so thankful for everything she did, knowing what she had to sacrifice. When she was in college, I would call her at least 4 times a week to see how she was doing and talk about stuff. In these conversations, she would tell me about her studies, work, and future plans. But she always managed to talk about Jacob too. The way she spoke about him really set the bar high for what I think love should be like. All the little things he did, surprising her with flowers, planning beautiful dates, and just being totally in love with her. All that respect and care. Growing up in a house with parents who probably should have gotten a divorce years ago, I never really had much of an example of what a healthy relationship looks like. That's why I became such close friends with Lauren and Jacob by association. Growing up, it was always just my sister and me. So when she introduced me to Jacob, it felt like I finally got an older brother. Eventually, Lauren and Jacob moved in together, got engaged, and are now married. Things took a turn for me when my parents kicked me out after I refused to pay rent. I work at an equity horse ranch. It's a really great place to work, and I love being around the horses. There's some great perks with this job, like access to the horses to practice and free lessons with an instructor. However, my pay isn't great, and with how much my parents were asking, I would either have to get a second job or quit to find something better paying. With no other choice, I ended up moving in with Lauren and Jacob. Jacob works from home, so unless he is out with Lauren or at the gym, he is usually around. He makes enough to get by, but I am not really sure what his job entails. Lauren mentioned it has something to do with his family's company, which pretty much explains how they get by. A couple of weeks ago, Lauren and Jacob told me that they were having a baby. Of course, I was very happy for them, but this pregnancy was a little worrying because Lauren did have a couple of miscarriages before. This time around, it's turning out to be a complicated pregnancy in every way, so we have to be very careful with the health of her. Before I moved out, my parents had an old car that I would drive to work and school, but once they kicked me out, I lost access to it. Losing the car was a bit of a blow, as I liked the independence it gave me, but I've been managing. Jacob, however, insisted on driving me to school in the morning and taking me to work, which I really appreciate. I was very thankful for Jacob's help since it meant I did not have to rely on the bus or walk. After his daily ritual at the gym, he would go home, shower, get me Starbucks, and then drop me off at school. In the afternoon, he'd pick me up and drive me to work. After my shift, he would usually be waiting outside or on his way, which was such a huge help, and I really did appreciate the time he took out of his day to drive me around. We would talk about everything, Lauren, the baby, and just life in general during those rides. He would ask me also if I was dating or if I had a crush on somebody. Sometimes he would even tease me and say things like, "Oh, you're too beautiful to be single. Come on, what are you hiding? You can tell me, I won't say anything." There was a guy I was talking to, but I wasn't ready to talk about it yet, so I kept my answers vague, not wanting to jinx anything. I didn't want to lie, but also wasn't ready to share too much. Eventually, Justin, a guy I worked with at a Whole Foods in the parking lot, asked me out. His family owned the ranch where I worked, so we spent a lot of time together, mostly when I was working. He'd come over to help out, or we'd go riding together. I was pretty stoked about it, so one day after my shift ended, I told Jacob. His reaction was immediate. He went completely cold. I don't know how to explain it, but after that conversation, the sense of warmth and comfort I once felt with Jacob just disappeared. He started asking a lot of direct, almost interrogative questions, and I answered them, thinking it was just his protective older brother instinct kicking in, and that he would eventually get used to the idea. But when I told him that Justin and I had been talking for like a month or so, he totally flipped out. He got so mad at me, screaming how I was lying, how I was keeping things from him. I ended up crying because he kept on saying that I was hiding something. What really stuck out to me was when he said, "What about us?" And that left me utterly confused. What did he mean by that? The worst is now I keep overthinking everything that happened since I moved in with them. There's a pool in the backyard. Sometimes I'd go out and swim or lie in the sun. Now, looking back, every time I did, Jacob would find some reason to be outside too, be it to fire up the grill or mow the lawn. It began to feel like I was being watched. A couple of times he even jumped in the pool with me, but I figured he was just exercising like I was. After swimming, I'd go to take a shower in the hallway bathroom, since Jacob and Lauren have their own attached to the master. After swimming or showering, I would head to my room to change and sometimes just sleep, but there were moments when, in the brief distance between the hallway and my room, wearing nothing but a towel, Jacob would be there, waiting for me and say in a very casual tone, "Good night," which I would respond to. Now, I can't help but wonder if there was a different reason for that. I won't say a single word about all this to my sister. She has been so fragile lately, and the pregnancy really is wearing her down. I don't want to say anything that will put any more stress on her, which might affect the baby. It's just that I have to find out if I'm really making all this up, and right now, I don't know how much I should trust my judgment. Looking back, I honestly never thought my sister would take his side over mine. But now, after reading other people's opinions on it, I feel I have to start gathering evidence in case. I will definitely try my best to alter the dynamic between Jacob and me without raising any red flags. I'm prepared to talk with my sister if ever I feel there's any immediate danger, but right now, I don't think Jacob is the kind of guy to act on anything detrimental. I'd rather just wait until my sister is better before sharing this with her, just to err on the side of caution. I don't want to add any more stress on her with the risks she's facing with her pregnancy. I just want to give him the benefit of the doubt because I know he's been under a lot of stress with my sister's high-risk pregnancy and how he'd had to take on more responsibility for her care. Probably he's just worried that something might happen to her. But seeing him get so upset really threw me off. And I didn't feel safe even if I do give him the benefit of the doubt, I know I need to set some boundaries. That really shook me up, and I don't want to be put in a position where I am vulnerable. Knowing that I couldn't take him down, I contacted some of my friends to see if they could carpool with me. I'll also ask Justin if he can give me a ride to and from work. If they fall through, I will find a job within walking distance. In the meantime, I am going to try to keep things on the brotherly level that I have felt with him. I am going to remain polite and not cause tension, as I do not want to be hostile or aggressive for no reason at all. But I will change things about my situation if need be. Update. First of all, I just wanted to thank everybody who commented or left advice on my last post. Reading them all last night made me realize that I am no longer safe in this situation, and from here on out, I will be making changes. Much as I respect and care for Jacob, I don't believe the risk is worth it anymore. I tried to have a conversation with him right after I posted, in hopes that we could just talk things out, but he was still grumpy, so I just went to my room. In the middle of the night, I started feeling like I needed to get out of the house. I felt trapped and needed some space, so I went walking to my usual place where I could try to clear my head. I had barely been there for 10 minutes when I received a text from Jacob asking me where I was. After that, my phone would not stop ringing, and I just couldn't find the words to describe the fear that overtook me. All I wanted was to be left alone. Eventually, I responded back, but that only opened the floodgates to him insulting me. He called me a spoiled princess who always got what she wanted and told me I needed to be treated like trash. Then he asked me to send him my location, and I wouldn't do that for anything. I told him to take a step back and reflect on what he had just said to me. Afterward, I called Justin, who fortunately answered the phone and listened as I recapped everything to him. I have no idea how much he understood as I was shaking and crying uncontrollably, but he drove over to where I was, asked me more questions about what had happened, and tried to console me. Eventually, I calmed down and told him everything again, this time more coherently. All the while, my phone was ringing repeatedly, and since I was so certain it was Jacob, I just ignored the calls. Finally, a call from my sister's number came through, and even though I knew it could be Jacob on the other end, I decided to answer it. It was, in fact, Jacob, and he let loose with a barrage of insults, loud enough for Justin to hear. Justin took the phone from my hand and told Jacob to shut up, assured him I was safe, and then hung up. Afterward, he reassured me that it would be okay and not to worry. Justin drove me all the way to the ranch and talked to his parents about what had happened and my current situation. I'm really grateful they agreed to let me stay in one of their extra rooms for a while, and I'll help out more around the farm. After that, I just tried to chill out with Justin and catch some Z's. I chose not to attend school today, to take a break and clear my mind. But then, Jacob's reaction and some of the comments I read really started making me worry about my sister. So, I picked up the phone and dialed her number, and thankfully she answered. Obviously, she had been crying, which only worried me more. Lauren asked if I was okay and if I was safe. She said last night she was woken up by Jacob's yelling, but just acted like she was sleeping. Then, she heard him come into their room and grab her phone from the charger. A few minutes later, she heard more yelling and the front door slamming. Evidently, Jacob had taken her phone to try to find me. She admitted she didn't know what to do and was terrified he might seriously hurt me. Jacob came back after an hour or so, but he was still furious. When she asked him what had happened and where he had been, he blew up at her for even asking. She said she'd never seen him that angry before. He was smashing furniture in his rage. A few chaotic minutes passed and he stormed out again, this time leaving her phone on the counter. So she went to check the call log after he left and saw all these dialed calls to me while he had her phone. In a panic, she got a hold of a friend to come pick her up and tried calling me. By that time, I was asleep and missed her calls. Lauren told me how she was scared Jacob had found me and felt awful for not protecting me or noticing sooner what was going on. Lauren asked me why I hadn't told her about Jacob's behavior, and I just didn't want to put any added stress on top of her while pregnant. We both ended up in tears for a while. The parents are allowing her to move back in rent-free apparently because they want to help with the grandbaby. Had this been offered in the very beginning, none of this would have happened. But I'm not going to dwell on that. Afterward, my sister and I went out to dinner and I showed her my post. We cried some more, and she admitted that she'd never been afraid of Jacob before, but after seeing his rage the other night, she was truly shaken. We still need to get our things from the house, but we plan to reach out soon and set a date to move everything out. My dad and Justin will be there to make sure everything goes smoothly in case Jacob tries anything. Lauren said Jacob had called her a couple of times, saying he was worried about my safety and how I shouldn't be out at night. Since she could hear exactly what he had been yelling at me, she knew he was lying. She told him she would file for divorce and hung up. I love my sister, and I know she's going to get through this and find someone who truly loves and respects her one day. On the bright side, Justin and I have a date next week, so I am pretty optimistic about that. I also want to thank the commenters on Reddit. Your advice really made me think. And frankly, it got me to take a smoke break that night, which might have saved me. I have no idea what might have occurred had I remained in my room, and I am simply thankful that I never had to find out.